Well, hello, Georgia. It is great to be back in the Peach State, but I'm here for one reason and one reason only, and that is that Georgia and America need 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House. And Black Voices for Trump is going to play a central role in delivering a great victory in November of 2020. So thank you all. Thanks for the warm welcome. It's great to see so many friends and familiar faces. And also to be here, would love you too. Also to be here with some great heroes of mine, like the great Ben Carson, who will be here in just a moment. And how about an extraordinary leader in this community and for America, Alveda King. And my great friend and a great champion for pro-growth policies and a great voice on the airwaves, Herman Cain. And part of our team, Katrina Pearson. And I don't want to leave out the amazing Laura Trump, the Trump family, and the whole campaign team. And I also want to say what a privilege it was. And you just heard a few minutes ago the quality, the character, the integrity of the first independently elected African-American statewide official in the history of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Attorney General-elect Daniel Cameron. Thank you for your service and your leadership. It really is an honor to be with all of you today. And I'm pleased to report to you that a friend of mine is on his way. You know, 3 years ago today, Georgia and America voted to make President Donald Trump the 45th President of the United States of America. And on that night, our new president pledged, in his words, to every citizen of our land that he would be a president for all Americans. And President Donald Trump delivered for every American. And we gather here today for the launch of this historic coalition because Black Voices for Trump know that President Donald Trump has delivered for African Americans in every community, in every state in this nation. And with your voices, with your support, and with your prayers, I know this movement will reach more African Americans than ever before. And come Election Day 2020, I know that we'll re-elect President Donald Trump with a historic percentage of African Americans for 4 more years in the White House. That's right. You know, since the earliest days of this administration, President Trump has fought to give every American of every race and creed and color the opportunity to live the American dream, and none more so than African Americans. As President Trump said just last month, African Americans built this nation, and we celebrate that proud heritage. Whether it's in the military or in business or education or law enforcement, every day African Americans make extraordinary contributions to the life of this nation. In fact, African Americans have fought for this country since our nation's founding. The very first American to give his life in our struggle for independence was Crispus Attucks, an African American. African Americans have served in uniform in every conflict in the long and storied history of this nation. From the Fighting 54th at Gettysburg, to the Harlem Hellfighters in Belleau Wood, to the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II. African Americans have fought to defend the lives and liberties of every American. and this nation will always honor the service and sacrifice that they represent. And today, that tradition continues. Today, more than 222,000 African Americans are serving our country in the uniform of the United States. And in support of all the men and women of our armed forces, President Donald Trump has already signed the largest increase in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan, including the largest pay raise for our armed forces in more than 10 years. And on this eve of Veterans Day weekend, thanks to the leadership of President Donald Trump, our veterans, including 2.5 million African American veterans, finally have access to the real-time, world-class health care that you earned in the uniform of the United States. We've reformed the VA, and Veterans Choice is now available for every veteran in America. I can tell, looking at this crowd, that there's more than a few men and women that have worn the uniform who are here. So would you mind, if you served in our armed forces, would you just put your hand in the air and let us show our thanks to you one more time? Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service. You know, the truth is our military is stronger. We're honoring our veterans. And that's a story that we need to tell to every community in this country. And Black Voices for Trump will tell that story of providing for the common defense for our military and our veterans to every community in this nation. That's why we're here. And beyond security, this president promised to get the American economy working again for every American. And man, did President Donald Trump deliver. I mean, right out of the gate, the president went to work to get this economy rolling again. It's amazing to think the most powerful economy in the history of the world hadn't grown by more than 2% for the last 8 years in the last administration. But President Trump went straight to work. We cut taxes across the board for working families and businesses, large and small. We rolled back regulation at a historic level. We've unleashed American energy, and America will now soon be a net exporter of energy for the first time in 75 years. This president has stood strong for free and fair trade, put American jobs and American workers first, and with the strong support of Senator Tim Scott, we've created nearly 9,000 opportunity zones, bringing billions of dollars of investment to inner city communities across America. And the result? The American economy is booming. From Election Day 3 years ago today, businesses large and small have created 6.7 million new jobs, including 1.2 million jobs for African Americans. 3 years ago today, the unemployment rate for African Americans was over 8%. Today, the unemployment rate for African Americans is the lowest level ever recorded in the history of this country, and the black poverty rate is at the lowest level ever. I mean, the American dream is working again for every American. And the stock market is soaring, strengthening the pension and the retirements of Americans all across this country. I mean, it's an incredible record of success for every American. And it's a record that we know that Black Voices for Trump is going to be able to carry to every community in every state in this nation. And President Trump also promised. He promised to stand for law and order in every community in this land. And this president promised to stand with the men and women who serve on the thin blue line of law enforcement, including more than 100,000 African American law enforcement officers who serve today. And President Donald Trump delivered. As I stand before you today, violent crime is down. And under the President's leadership, we're waging an unprecedented fight against opioid abuse and addiction in America. And in the last year, for the first time in over a decade, overdose deaths from opioid abuse and addiction are on the decline in America. We're making progress. So it's been about standing with the men and women of law enforcement. It's about standing for law and order. It's about making progress. It's about making progress in opioid abuse and addiction, but it's also been advancing the cause of justice. And after years of one administration after another just talking about it, President Donald Trump delivered criminal justice reform, and the First Step Act is now the law of the land. You know, the truth is, President Trump promised to defend the rule of law, as the Attorney General-elect just said a few moments ago so eloquently. This president promised to defend the rule of law and uphold all the rights of every American enshrined in the founding documents of this country. And once again, President Donald Trump delivered. As I stand before you today, this president has already appointed more than 150 principled judges to our federal courts at every level, including Justice Neil Gorsuch and Justice Brett Kavanaugh. And I can tell you firsthand, having met so many of these men and women, they're all principled conservatives who will defend all the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution, like the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. And at a time when 1/3 of all abortions in this country end the life of unborn African Americans, I couldn't be more proud to stand with a president and a party that stands without apology for the sanctity of human life. Thank you. So it's about security. It's about prosperity and jobs. It's about life and liberty for African Americans and every American. And those of you that are gathered here today at this historic launch of Black Voices for Trump, that's our message. And we're going to carry that message all across this land. That America is safe again. America is prosperous again. The truth is, for African Americans and every American, we've made America great again. It's true. But to keep America great, we need all of you to lend your voices. Black Voices for Trump, everyone across this country, to carry our message to every community of every state of every nation. To tell our fellow Americans of every race and creed or color that African Americans and every American need 4 more years of President Donald Trump in the White House. So thank you for allowing me to join you for this historic kickoff. I wouldn't miss it for the world. This is a special day. And it speaks about the reach of this movement all across this country. I see it everywhere I go. Americans from every background and every walk of life see in this president the kind of leadership that's made America safe again and made America prosperous again. And it's inspiring to see all of you gathered here for this historic kickoff. And I thank you for the honor of being with you today. I truly do. But I want to encourage each one of you. I want you to go from here with confidence and faith. Go with confidence that America is winning again because of the leadership of President Donald Trump in the White House and all of our allies at every level of government. And go with confidence as you carry this message to every American in every community. Go with confidence that history is on our side. And remember the proud heritage of the Republican Party with African Americans. Ours is the party that was born in equality of opportunity. The first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, signed the Emancipation Proclamation, ended slavery, won the Civil War, and set our country on the path to a more perfect union. The first 3 African Americans elected to the United States Senate were Republicans. The first 21 African Americans elected to the House of Representatives were Republicans. It was a Republican president, Teddy Roosevelt, who invited Booker T. Washington to be the first African American to dine at the White House. It was a Republican president who put an end to separate but equal, sending federal troops to protect the Little Rock Nine. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of an administration and standing with a president who has renewed our party's proud commitment to equality of opportunity for all. I mean, that's why Black Voices for Trump is so important. So I want to encourage you to bring all your enthusiasm. Bring the story of what this president has done for this community and for every American. Be ready to volunteer. Be ready to lend your voice, because the election year is upon us, and Election Day is less than 1 year away. And most of all, I'd encourage you to get out there and tell the story. Tell the American people how we're more secure today. America's standing taller in the world again. Our military is stronger than ever before. Our nation's economy more prosperous than ever before. Our God-given liberties more secure and more protected than ever before. Go tell them how we've expanded opportunities like never before. And tell them how we share their values. Tell them that the Republican Party is their party. Tell them the Republican Party is where they belong. And finally, have faith. Have faith in this president who I serve alongside every single day, who turns his face like flint against the wind and has never stopped fighting to keep that promise he made 3 years ago today to be president for every American. Have faith in our fellow Americans. Have faith in your neighbors and friends and their ability to set old political habits aside and look at results and look at promises made and promises kept, if we'll go tell them the story of what this president has done for them, for their families, and their future. And finally, I encourage you to have faith. Have the faith that has always been synonymous with the historic African American community in this country, since before our nation's founding to this very day. You know, in March of 2010, I had the great privilege of co-chairing the annual Civil Rights Pilgrimage to Selma, Alabama, with a Georgia congressman named John Lewis. We went there that day to mark the 45th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. And we reenacted that march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I had my wife and children with me. It was a day I'll never forget. We gathered in the Brown Chapel in town, and we had a worship service. And then, like they had done that day 45 years earlier, we walked to the bridge. And as we were walking up the bridge, there was an old pastor who had been a young man on that day 45 years earlier named Dr. F.D. Reese. And I was walking with him, and for those of you that have been there, and every American should go, the Edmund Pettus Bridge is actually very steep, and you have to walk up to the middle before you can see the other side. And Pastor Reese told me, he said they had walked to the top of the bridge, and when they reached the top, they looked down, and they saw a sea of flashing lights and police and mounted officers. And I told him, I looked at him as we looked down on that scene 45 years later and imagined it in my mind. I said to him, did you all ever think about turning back? And he smiled the way old men sometimes smile at younger men. And he said, Mike, we had all prayed at the Brown Chapel, decided to go on regardless. And so they did. And when that march was over, the brutality of that moment and the courage of those people would inspire the passage of the Voting Rights Act and help transform this nation to a more perfect union because of their courage and because of their faith. I'll never forget when it was all over, I looked at Dr. Reese and I stuck my hand out and I thanked him for what he'd done for this country. And the courage that they'd shown that day and the way they'd helped change America for the better. And he looked at me one more time and smiled. And he said, Mike, don't thank me so much for what we did here. He said, God did something here. That's faith. That's the faith of this community. Faith that has always echoed from the pews and pulpits across this land throughout our history. Faith that generations of African Americans have clung to through centuries of struggle, through emancipation, through a civil rights movement. And it's faith that's still driving us today to a more perfect union. Faith that where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. That means freedom always wins. And that if we will but put our trust in Him, we'll see our way through these challenging times. We'll reach more Americans than ever before. And we'll renew and strengthen as never before this one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So men and women, I'm going to get out of the way and let you hear from the one you came here to hear from. But to all of you gathered here, to Black Voices for Trump, have confidence, have faith. We got work to do, less than 1 year to do it. But seeing you all here, I'm more confident than ever that if all of us do all that we can, in every day between now and Election Day 2020, we're going to deliver another great victory for every American come November 2020. We're going to make America safer than ever before. We're going to make America more prosperous than ever before. With your hard work and prayers in the days ahead, reaching out and telling our story to every American in every community, we'll put President Donald Trump back in the White House for 4 more years, and we will keep America great. Thank you very much. God bless you.